Hey everybody, welcome to the Penn State 365 podcast. My name is Dylan Callan, Corley, beat writer and recruiting analyst here at Happy Valley Insider of the Rivals Network covering Penn State athletics. I'm joined by my co-host and colleague Marty Leap as we preview the Nittany Lions' third game of the season here this weekend against the Illinois Fighting Illini. We will not be without Anthony tonight. Anthony has some prior engagements to take care of, but we do have his prediction, which we'll get to later on for Saturday afternoon's game. Marty, how are you doing since we last talked on, I believe it was Saturday afternoon, recapping Penn State versus Delaware? How have you been, and ready for another week of college football?
Yeah, I've been doing pretty well. Just another week. So yeah, excited for another weekend. Really, not a great slate this weekend, but these tend to sometimes be the weekends that jump out and surprise you with some really good games. So yeah, excited for it, and excited to see what Penn State can do. First road test of the year, first conference game of the year, ready to go.
Absolutely. Penn State traveling to Champaign for their first road test of the year. Uh, Game will be played at Memorial Stadium, holding just a little under 61,000 people. Kickoff scheduled for 12 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. local time. Game will be broadcasted on Fox with Gus Johnson, Joel Klatt, and Jenny Taft on the call. Big Noon Saturday was originally supposed to be there. Big Noon Kickoff was originally supposed to be there, but instead we'll be going back out to Folsom for Colorado versus Colorado State on Saturday. Nonetheless, Penn State versus Illinois will be on Fox. Marty, last season Illinois was one of the feel-good stories of the Big Ten, you could say. Put together, I believe, an 8-4 record. Looked like they were building some positive momentum under Brett Bielema, but this 2023 season has not been as smooth for them through the first 2 weeks. Narrowly escaped Toledo in week 1, 30-28. Gave up a ton of yards defensively in that game. Came back last week, went on the road to Lawrence and lost to Kansas 34-23. Not a terrible loss. Kansas has been a very respectable team under Lance Leipold, but this is certainly not the Illinois team coming into the season that we expected to see, which is surprising to me. Bielema is, one of the best coaches. One of the more underrated coaches I think in college football. I know his time at Arkansas did not go as planned, but he's a very good coach who won in the Big Ten before at Wisconsin. He's done a good job with this Final Illini program. But that being said, their start this season has been quite surprising. It's not the offense that's struggling, it's the defense. I know they lost Ryan Walters, their defense coordinator, to Purdue. They lost quite a bit of talent on the defensive side of the ball as well. But this is still a team that returned quite a bit of talent, and I'm just surprised that they've been as bad as they have. They're allowing nearly 500 yards of offense per game. I think it's probably actually closer to 450. Nonetheless, they've allowed over 900 yards total offense through 2 games here. They've been beat up on the ground quite a bit. Are you surprised at all with how Illinois struggled here in the early season?
Yeah, without a doubt, coming into the year, I said that in my opinion, this Illinois defensive line was, especially the defensive tackle position, just about as good as any Penn State was
Yeah.
going to face this year. About as good as any in the Big Ten, and they haven't looked like it in the offense. I don't think you could have anticipated the drop-off there's been in the running game and the loss of Chase Brown. Through 2 games, Luke Altmaier is their leading rusher, and anytime your quarterback is your leading rusher, with a couple of very rare exceptions, that's not a good thing. So, this is definitely a game I think 2 weeks ago looked a lot more challenging and worrisome than it does now. But that said, it's an 11 a.m. local kick. It's a conference game. It's against a coach who is very good. The crowd should be full. It should be excited. So, yeah, it's still a game. You can't overlook this. You can't take the Illini lightly, even with the whiteout against Iowa, in a game that I feel very confident saying the coaching staff has circled and has had circled for quite a while looming. You can't come out and look ahead this weekend because Illinois is still perfectly capable of pulling the upset if this is a game where Penn State comes out and doesn't play well.
100% agree. And of course, the last time these two teams met, 2021, when the Nittany Lions and Illini went to 9 overtimes. before Illinois pulled out a 20-18 victory. It was one of the uglier games of recent memory for Penn State. It's going to go down in infamy with that 6-4 Iowa game. That being said, Marty, I don't think we should be expecting another 9 overtime game this week in between these two programs.
No, even if Penn State would win this time, I have no interest in another 9 overtime shenanigans. It's a stupid rule. The 2-point playoff shootout, whatever you want to call it. It's dumb. It's stupid. It's gimmicky, and a game should never be decided that way.
It definitely is a flaw to college football. I'd agree with that. But let's now talk more about this game. So, I mean, on paper, this is a game coming in that Penn State, I think you have to feel good about where the Nittany Lions stand as a team and how they match up against this Illinois team heading into the season. I'm pulling up Illinois' stats here quickly. But like I said, this has been an Illinois team that through the first 2 weeks of the season has been quite susceptible to getting beat up on the ground. They've allowed 224 rushing yards per game this season. Last week against Kansas, they allowed 262 yards. This is a Penn State offense that, thrives with the ground game. Two of the best running backs in the country, Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. And then, you have Trey Potts as well in that backfield. This is a matchup just between Penn State's rushing attack and the Illinois defense that Penn State should be able to control the game on the ground alone. And, also in that case, control the time of possession. I'm very intrigued, I guess, to a degree, was the first 2 weeks for Illinois an actual sign of what they are this year? Is it more of knocking the rust off, getting the new pieces in? Because, I mean, that's a talented front seven. They have two of the better defensive linemen / two of the best defensive tackles in the Big Ten in Jer'Zhan Newton and Keith Randolph Jr. Do you think this Illinois front seven, especially that defensive line, is better than they have been, or do you think we should expect much of what we saw these first 2 weeks?
I mean, I still think they're better than they've shown. This is a really good group. They were really good last year. They returned a lot of it. You have guys here who you look as potential first-round picks in the draft.
Especially
I think
Newton.
You've got to – especially – I mean, Newton might be the best defensive lineman in the Big Ten. I think there's an argument there to be made, a very strong argument there to be made. So – again, it's not a game you can come out and overlook. If you come out and overlook them, you're going to be in a lot of trouble on Saturday. So, the offensive line needs to step up. The offensive line, it was Delaware, but they played better against Delaware than they did against West Virginia. I think the offensive line needs to play better than they did against West Virginia to get the offense going the way you want it to. We'll see what happens. But, again, Penn State needs to come into this with the mindset that, hey, this is the Illinois team that we expected to be 2-0, the Illinois team that we expected to have one of the best defenses in the Big Ten, the Illinois team that we expect to be able to run the ball. Even if they haven't done it yet, I think that's very much in there for the Fighting Illini. Penn State needs to plan and play accordingly.
100% agree with you there. And I would say Jer'Zhan Newton is going to be a big test for Hunter Norzad, who did have the best of Week 1 performances against West Virginia. But now, he comes back this week after not playing a ton last week against Delaware. Perhaps he's a little, more healthy again, past those bumps and bruises. But this will be a big test for Norzad here this week, especially in the run game. Penn State on paper right now matches up well when it comes to the rushing attack versus Illinois' run defense. Illinois' secondary this year has been also quite weak, allowing 253 yards per game. In Week 1 against Toledo, they allowed 230, but last week against one of the better quarterbacks in the country, in Jalen Daniels, they allowed 277 passing yards. Daniels may be a little bit of a better overall quarterback right now than Drew, but I think the skill set that Drew has, especially as a passer, is more similar, of course, to to Daniels than it would be to whomever Toledo's starting quarterback is this year. That is another matchup right there that Penn State matches up really well against Illinois' defense. I mean, this is an Illinois defense, which I believe lost three key members of their secondary to the NFL draft from last year. They do return plenty of talent, but that talent has not clicked yet or gelled together. So it'll be interesting to see if that is that's another aspect of this Illinois defense that was expected, to be a strength for them, but it hasn't shown so far. The one thing I will say is, and I don't mean this as a slight towards Toledo, Kansas, but I think taking on a team like Penn State, a top 10 team in the country, a team that the last time these two teams met, Illinois beat, Illinois is going to be up and ready for this game. They are going to bring their own juice. Brett Bielema does a great job of getting his teams ready for these types of games. So Penn State, I think, as you mentioned at the top, has to come out ready in this one. They cannot afford a slow start. And during the James Franklin era, Penn State has at times struggled in these 11 a.m. kickoffs. So it's going to be very intriguing to see how that affects the Nittany Lions as well.
Yeah, I think that's key to the start. If you can come out and jump on this Illinois team early, get up some points, I think that's big. I mean, you mentioned the secondary. Illinois lost three. They had three secondary players get drafted in the top 70 of the NFL draft last year. That secondary was gutted by the draft. So, again, you'd like to see them take advantage of that. You mentioned Jalen Daniels from Kansas. And, yeah, obviously he's a better runner than Drew Allar, but in no world is he a better passer.
Correct.
In no world does Kansas have better receivers than Penn State. In no world does Toledo most certainly have better receivers than Penn State. So I think this could be a big weekend for Keandre Lambert-Smith, for the tight ends, for Malik McLean, whoever, Trey Wallace. But yeah, I think that's important. I think it'll be important too to come out and get Drew in a rhythm.
Yep.
And use the running game to help that happen. As great as Drew has looked, this is his first career road start. This is by far the best defense he's faced this year. I think it's going to be very important to come out early, get Drew in a rhythm, get him building some confidence, some momentum early in this game, and then build a ride that. Because, I mean, I think this is a game where the Penn State offense, 9 straight games now, 30-plus points, 10 straight, whatever it is. There's no reason that streak can't continue this weekend. But I think it'll be important for them to come out early in this game, get the offense in a rhythm, some easy hits for Drew, some quick outs, some slants, things of that nature, just to get him going, get this passing game going, and then start building the running game off of that.
Yeah, you referenced that 30-plus points in 9 straight games stat. That is the official stat is, Penn State scored 30-plus points in each of the last 9 games dating back to last season. In those 9 games, Penn State is averaging 41.8 points and 463 total yards of offense. I mean, since that Michigan game last year for Penn State, the Nittany Lions have been without a doubt one of the best offenses in the country. And that's with 2 different quarterbacks as well, which I think is quite notable. And even further than that, if you want to talk about just how good Mike Yurcich has been since 2021, that first year I think we can all agree was not a great year for Mike Yurcich or this Penn State offense. But since then, over Penn State's last 15 games, so the first 2 weeks of this season and every game of last season, Penn State's averaging 37 points and over 440 yards of total offense. They're only one of 14 teams in the country to be averaging 37 points since the beginning of last season. I mean, just off topic of the Illinois game, it's just a testament of what a fantastic coach and hire Mike Yurcich has been for James Franklin, just how good Mike Yurcich is at his job. I mean, he was hired and it was well thought of as one of the better offense coordinators in the country. But whenever he does leave Penn State, he's going to leave Penn State as arguably one of the top 10, if not better, offense coordinators in the country, in my opinion. There's just not many offensive coordinators who have the feel for the game and they play calling capabilities that Yurcich has shown throughout his career, but especially over the last 15 games or so. He's called some fantastic games for Penn State. You're muted.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Yurcich, when Penn State hired him, it was one of those, it was, at the time I called it a big boy hire because this was the kind of move that big boy programs went out and made. You bring in a Mike Yurcich when he's available, because I'm with you. I think Yurcich is hands down the 10 best offense coordinators in college football. I think he has been for quite some time. So So yeah, I agree. He's really got this offense humming. He has been calling some great games. I think the West Virginia game, I think, was one of the best games he's called as Penn State's offense
Yeah.
coordinator. Um, I thought last year in the Rose Bowl against Kyle Whittingham, one of the best
Yeah.
defensive minds in college football, he coached circles around him. You go back to that Iowa game in 2021 until Sean Clifford got hurt. Phil Parker might be the best defense coordinator in football, and he had Parker clueless, just
And
clueless to what's coming. He's one of the best, and you're gonna have to lean on that this Saturday with your quarterback, first year starter, first road start. You've got one of the best offense coordinators in the country up there in the booth. You're going to need him to bring his A game, and I've got no doubts that Yurcich will.
absolutely, and I mean, we'll get to see Yurcich versus Phil Parker in a week, so that should be exciting because I no offense to Taquan Roberson, but once Taquan Roberson came into the game, Penn State was quite handicapped with what they could do, and it got from a selfish point of view of just being a fan of great football, great offensive line versus great defensive line. Really feel that Sean Clifford injury kind of robbed us of what could have been a really intriguing matchup the rest of that game because Iowa obviously would have made some adjustments and who knows what happens if Clifford stays healthy. I think Penn State would have won, but at the same time it would have been intriguing to see. But we'll get to see that in a week. But for now, I guess we should focus on this Illinois game. But I think overall, Marty, I think it's just fair to say that Penn State offensively matches up really well against this Illinois defense through the first 2 games of the season. Short sample size, but I mean, this Illinois defense struggled with the athletes that Kansas has. Penn State's athletes are multitudes better than what Kansas has. And I just don't know if this Illinois team can fix all of their issues in 1 week to the point that they're going to be able to stop Penn State enough on Saturday. Maybe the secondary is a little bit better. Maybe the rushing attack is a little better. But I'm not sure that both are going to be that much better that Illinois has a good chance of knocking off Penn State.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's man, they got to improve a lot. They've got to improve a lot if you're Illinois, and if you're Penn State, I think some of this, and this is where having a guy like Yurcich can help. Some of it comes down to is simply don't overthink this.
Yeah.
You've watched what Illinois has struggled with so far this year defensively,
Yep.
and while you expect them to be better than that, you don't want to get in a situation where you overthink it and like, oh man, they've really struggled this year, but it's not what we expected. We think they can be better than that until they prove they can stop it, come out and try and expose it. So I think that's a big thing. And again, with Mike Yurcich, I can't say I'm worried about that happening. But yeah, it's coming into the year, even though I never once thought Penn State was going to lose this game, I never would have been in a position to pick them to lose this game. I thought this was one that could be a real just knockdown dogfight kind of a game, and it still very well may be.
Sure.
But Penn State can out athlete Illinois to a point that even if the Illini hang around early, because I don't expect Penn State to just take off and run away with this thing, that's for certain.
Not early.
Yeah, no, I think Penn State will win by multiple scores, but I don't think this is going to be seeing them jump up 21-0 or something.
Yeah, it's not out of hand by halftime. It may be 14 points at halftime, but it's not going to be 35-7.
Correct.
Probably.
And if it is, then you really can start to salivate about this offense because this is still a somewhat formidable Illinois defense. But no, I think again, it's just you got to come out and set the tone early, get into a groove offensively. You can out athlete them at every position. Don't be afraid to do that. If you're struggling to get going offensively, don't be afraid to scheme something up where you just get Nick Singleton or Keandre Lambert-Smith the ball in space and tell them to go run past people to get a spark because it's there. Just come out, use your athletes. You're the more athletic team. You're probably the honestly, as crazy as it may be to say about any team, any game involving Brett Bielema, you're probably the more physical team. Come out, lean on that, take care of business, get the win, get out of there, and come home ready for the whiteout.
And it's worth noting, last time these two teams met, yes, Illinois beat Penn State, but that was a game where Sean Clifford came back. We can both agree too early from that injury that he suffered against Iowa. And it significantly, limited his mobility in that game. And that's what ultimately cost Penn State was that Sean Clifford was a true statue in the pocket. I don't expect Penn State's offensive line to play to that level of what the offensive line in 2021 played. But at the same time, Drew may not be, the most mobile quarterback, but he's still going to be able to climb the pocket and do all those things that we've seen him do in flashes last year and through 2 games this year. So, I mean, I have very little worries about what this Penn State offense is going to do against this Illinois defense. I think 30 plus points is quite probable. I mean, I think Penn State should score 30, 35 points a game at least in every game this season. And I'm including Michigan and Ohio State. Maybe not Michigan, but Ohio State. I definitely include them in that. And that's not a knock at Ohio State, but Penn State, Ohio State, as we've seen, tends to end up in these shootouts. But this on paper is a matchup that Penn State's offense should definitely feel very good about heading into Saturday's game. And I think at the end of the day, it's just Penn State has to come out and just play their game, like you said. Keep it simple. Don't try to get fancy. You don't need to be fancy in this game. You just need to play your game, play your A game. Even if Penn State brought their, I would say they could probably bring their C plus game offensively and probably still be okay here. But limit the turnovers, limit the negative yardage plays here, and they should be just fine.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I'm sitting there going through my mind, like, what can they get away with this Saturday? And C plus, what I kept going back to. And I also think that's if Illinois plays a pretty good game. If you get Illinois playing their C plus game, you can go out to probably muck this up pretty good and escape. Yeah. But I think even if Illinois comes out and plays at a pretty clean rate, maybe not if Illinois is playing an A game, but B game, A minus. If you play your C plus, you're going to be okay. And a lot of times too, when you have a season that has the expectations this one has, when you go on the road in conference play, I don't care who you're playing. It's the NCAA tournament mindset. Survive in advance. Yep. Survive in advance. When you think you're good enough to make the playoff and win a national championship, when you're on the road in conference play, survive in advance. And you see it all the time. I mean, just within the Big Ten, I know this is going back quite a ways, but look when Ohio State beat Miami for the title in 2002. They went on the road against a pretty mediocre Purdue team, got bailed out by a tremendous play by Chris Gamble at the end. But you know what? The only thing Buckeye fans remember from that season was winning a title. They don't care that they went on the road against a mediocre Purdue team we're lucky to win. When you have these kind of expectations, it's survive in advance for any sort of road conference game. I've always felt that way. I feel that way going into this weekend. You don't care if you're Penn State. You don't care if you win 50-0 or if you win 10-3. You just want to win, because as long as you win, every goal you have is still in front of you. Now, if you lose this weekend, every goal you have is still in front of you, but you no longer have margin for error. So you just come out this weekend, you win, and you continue to control your own destiny.
Yeah, well said. And I think we mentioned it, but Penn State is a 14.5 point favorite here. Over under currently set at 48.5. Gotta say, I kind of like for the bettors out there, I kind of like the potential over of 48.5 here, because I think Penn State could potentially get to the 40-point mark, and I think 10 to 14 points is likely out of Illinois. But let's shift our focus actually to how Penn State's defense matches up against this Illinois offense, because Marty, I kind of see some similarities between Illinois and West Virginia. Luke Altmyer, may not be a true dual threat quarterback, but this is a guy who has shown over the first 2 weeks of the season, including last week when he had a 70-some yard touchdown, that he can take off and run when needed. Do you have any concerns about how Penn State can keep Altmyer in the pocket in this game after what we saw in Week 1? I mean, they'll surely improve from that, but what we saw in Week 1 was that Penn State's defense can't be, to a degree, I'm not sure of the right word, but a dual threat quarterback can definitely give the Nittany Lions a little bit of an issue here.
Yeah, you go back to the game. Well, first off, I think Garrett Green is Altmyer is a better passer of the two, but I think Garrett Green's the better runner.
I agree.
Athlete. I also think that game, Penn State's defensive ends and linebackers, I think when we look back at the end of the year, we could look and say with ease, hey, this was the worst game the linebackers and the
Yeah.
defensive ends played all season. They didn't play well. So,
And,
I mean, I
yeah.
think
And it was a tough
even if
matchup for week 1
it was, and
for
then West Virginia, I
offensive
know.
offensive line, defensive line.
Yes, I know we've said it a million times. That West Virginia offense line is really good. They've
Yeah.
got multiple future NFL guys on that line.
For sure.
You know, other than Michigan, they're not going to see a better offensive line this season than West Virginia's.
For sure.
So you throw all that together, I'm sure Illinois is going to try and use Altmaier's legs. First off, the only way they're going to run the ball this year. Second off, West Virginia did it with success against Penn State running the quarterback. That said, I think as long as Curtis Jacobs does what he's done, he is just low-key been maybe their best defensive player so far this year.
Absolutely.
You get Abdul Carter to be a little more disciplined than he was against West Virginia, and you get your ends to just stay home and contain, you're going to be okay. I'm sure Altmaier is going to rip off a big run or two when you have an offense where the running game is built around running the quarterback, especially when the quarterback is probably going to be pressured because, boy, go watch highlights of Illinois' offensive line against Kansas. No knock on Kansas's defensive line, but I feel very confident saying Penn State's defensive end room is much better than Kansas, and Illinois could not block Kansas. So you're going to see Altmaier running for his life a lot on Saturday likely. When that happens, you're going to give up a few big runs.
Sure.
I mean, look at Auburn last year. We had TJ Finley, who might be slower than me, who ripped off a couple runs for first downs. It's just when you play that style of defense, it's going to happen, and you'll live with that because in Manny's defense, you're aggressive. You're going to force turnovers. You're going to get the TFLs. You're going to get the sacks. They're going to kind of negate that out. So I'm sure that will happen. I can't say it's a concern. Now, if Altmaier comes out Saturday and is consistently running with success, then I think, yes, you start to chalk this up as a bit of a concern. But at the same time, A, are you really going to face another quarterback? Maybe J.J. McCarthy who can do that. And B, it's 3 games. If for 3 games the biggest concern about your defense is containing quarterback run, you're in a pretty good spot. So I'm not going to say it's a concern. I will say I expect Altmaier to get a couple good runs on Saturday. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's something that's going to gash the defense.
And I think the other thing to remember here is that, and ultimately my biggest point with Penn State's defense versus Illinois' offense is that even if Illinois keeps this close thanks to their defense in the first half or so, I just don't think Illinois can score enough points in this game to ultimately win the game. Because I think, each game we could talk about a magic number. What does Penn State have to get to win a game? I think to win this game, Penn State has to get to 24 points. Like I just don't know if I see this Illinois offense being able to score more than 3 touchdowns. Even that is that would be what went wrong defensively type performance for Penn State.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, we'll get into our game predictions here shortly, obviously, but I have the Illini scoring less than 20 points in this. I'm with you. I think that's a factor. I don't see. I think if Illinois gets over 20, I think it's because Penn State really aids. A pick six, a special teams gaffe, a fumble, something that's either leads directly to defensive or special teams points for Illinois, or something that sets Illinois up for a short, easy drive. So I'm with you. I think the Illini offense, I don't know where they're going to get it from. I really don't, especially how much they've struggled to run the ball this year.
Well, the one guy that could potentially be that guy for Illinois on Saturday when it comes to running the ball successfully is Reggie Love III. 20 carries, 108 yards so far this season. 5'11", 190 pounds. So he's a nice size running back, but not the biggest running back. In week 1, we saw Penn State struggle with West Virginia's C.J. Donaldson. But C.J. Donaldson, what many don't know, is a former tight end. I mean, Donaldson is, I think, 6 foot and 220, 230 pounds, if I remember. Yeah, 6'1", 238. There's very few running backs in college football that size, and those running backs are going to tend to give almost anybody a problem because of their size, especially when they have the athleticism that C.J. Donaldson has. I do think that Reggie Love is a quality running back. He's done it before. I mean, last year he averaged 4.5 yards per carry, but I don't see him giving this Penn State defense any huge troubles on Saturday. Maybe he gets some carries, he breaks off 2-3 runs of 10 or so yards. But for the most part, I think Penn State's going to be able to keep them under that 5 yards per carry mark.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Again, you mentioned C.J. Donaldson. Again, that was a good back.
Yeah.
Outside of the Michigan duo and what they're going to see at Ohio State, I'm not sure they see another back as good as Donaldson in the regular season. I'm really not. So I think that was a factor. Now Reggie Love is a good running back. I won't be surprised to see Love get a lot of carries this weekend, get some yards. But yeah, I'm with you. If you could, the big thing is going to be the yards per carry, because if this is one of those things where Reggie Love, and we saw this when Illinois and Penn State played in 2021, people freaked out about Penn State giving up 350 rushing yards or whatever it was, but only ran the ball like 60 times.
Yeah.
If Love runs for 105 yards, it's because he carries the ball 25, 30 times. You're not really going to bat an eye at that. Now, if he's doing 105 yards on 12, 15 carries, then you get a little concerned. But yeah, that's where I'm with you. I think yards per carry and yards per play is going to be a big thing for this defense, because Illinois, ultimately, they know if they're going to pull this upset, they've got to shorten this game. They're going to look to shorten the game by running the ball.
Yep.
So similar to West Virginia week 1, where if they get a lot of yards, it's because they run the ball 40, 50 times, you'll live with that. You can't be letting them rip off 4, 5, 6 yards with regularity, because that's when you start getting in trouble.
100% agree with you there. Definitely, Illinois will be looking to shorten this game up with running the ball on time possession. Notably, the right side of Illinois' offensive line, I think, has been a massive struggle based off what I've watched on tape of them from the first 2 weeks.
That right tackle probably wants to take the film that Kansas game and just burn it.
Yeah,
it was ugly.
It does, but with that being said, that is a favorable matchup for Penn State to take advantage of, because they could put a decent Isaac out there. They could put Chubb Robinson out there. They could deny Dennis Sutton out there. They have 3 or 4 guys they can put out there and probably feel good about that matchup. And then, I mean, you put if you're getting pressure consistently off one side of the line, it's only going to cause Illinois to shift protection more towards that side, which is going to open up opportunities on the other side. So this is a game where Penn State's defensive line could potentially feast on getting on this Illinois offensive line and get into the backfield.
Yeah, I think this could be a big game for the Penn State defensive line. I mean, I think we saw them. I mean, again, it was Delaware, but they played really well against Delaware, better than they did against West Virginia. I'm not going to be surprised. I don't think Chop or Deny Dennis Sutton have a sack yet. I believe Isaac has 1. I wouldn't be surprised to see all 3 of them get a sack this weekend, or at least back up some tackles for loss. Because, again, especially that right tackle, I mean, that right tackle going up against the Isaac, Deny Dennis Sutton, a blitzing linebacker, whoever it is, just if he plays anywhere close to what he did against Kansas, Altmaier is going to be running for his life early and often on Saturday. So, yeah, I agree. I think this could be a big game for Penn State's defensive line.
Absolutely. Other guys to pay attention to on this Illinois offense, there's not many. I mean, I think the big one that obviously stands out is Isaiah Williams, who, by the way, it feels like Isaiah Williams has been at Illinois for a decade now. It feels very similar to the Sean Clifford experience, I'm sure, for Illinois fans. Williams has had a solid start to the season, 11 receptions for 150 yards. This is after an 82 reception season last year for 715 yards and 5 touchdowns. So he'll definitely be somebody to watch against this Penn State secondary. But beyond him, I mean, there's guys like Casey Washington and Pat Bryant who have been quality targets but don't have a lot of yards after the catch. 2 maybe big play guys who haven't had a ton of playing time this year, or a ton of opportunities, is Griffin Moore and Tip Ryman. But at the end of the day, I don't think this is a receiving corps for Illinois that really should make Penn State's secondary feel all too threatened. This is a game Penn State secondary matches up very well against Luke Altmaier and the Illinois wide receiver room. I mean, Altmaier also is not a quarterback who is prone to not making mistakes. He has 3 interceptions already this season. I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State gets 1 or 2 on Saturday.
Yeah, first off, wherever number one goes on Saturday, that's Isaiah Williams' numbers for those who don't know. Kalen King better be stuck to him because he's
Yeah.
the one guy on this offense you worry about. Well, one other thing with Isaiah Williams too, because I've thought this before. I agree. It feels like he's been in college forever. Now, I think a reason why it feels like he's been in Illinois forever, if everyone remembers that Illinois Rose Bowl team with Rashard Mendenhall and Jay Lehman and that crew, and what was it, '07?
Yeah.
Juice Williams, the quarterback of that team's real name was Isaiah. So I think I think that's a big factor too. Because I've thought before, like, man, there's no way he's got eligibility left. It's literally been like 10 years. And I'm like, oh, that was a different Isaiah Williams 10 plus years ago. But I guess almost 20 years ago now. Christ. But anyway, yeah, wherever number one goes on Sunday, number four needs to follow because he is the one guy on this offense you worry about as a true game breaker who can really make a big play and burn you. And think about it. Football, if you want to pull an upset, most of the times, if you're going to make it happen, you need a couple of those
Yep.
game-changing plays. And Isaiah Williams is the one guy who can provide that. So you put best on best. You put best on best. I want to see Kalen King stuck to him like glue on Sunday.
But overall, much like the Penn State offense against Illinois defense, I think you have to feel very good about what this Penn State offense can do against Penn State's defense can do against this Illinois offense. This isn't an explosive Illinois offense by any means. They've totaled 357 yards per game this year, but it's just not one that scares you overall when you're talking about the type of talent that Penn State has. Now, if Penn State doesn't bring their A or B game Saturday, this Illinois offense could give them some troubles. But if Penn State shows up, I just, like I said, I don't see Illinois getting more than 14, 17 points tops in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you again. I think unless they get some help from Penn State in one turnovers, poor special teams, a busted play, a busted coverage, stupid penalties, something like that, I really have a hard time seeing Illinois gain north of 20 points in this one.
All right. Before we give our game predictions here, worth noting from practice this week, cornerback Daquan Hardy, defensive end Amin Vanover, and defensive tackle Keziah Azard all returned to the practice field. James Franklin would not comment if any of them would be playing on Saturday, but it is definitely a good sign that all three practiced on, at least during the media availability on Wednesday, potentially regarding their availability for Saturday's game. Marty Evans was also practicing. Evans did play at the tail end of the Delaware game, but did miss the first game against West Virginia. J.B. Nelson was also practicing and talked to the media, so it seems like he should be ready to go on Saturday as well, which all good news for Penn State as they're getting healthy here right before Big Ten play starts, or at least it appears they're getting healthy. We'll see what the availability report looks like on Saturday morning. All right, Marty, I guess let's give our Penn State versus Illinois prediction, and let's give the predictions for the rest of the Big Ten slate here in week number 3. I'm going to start out with Anthony's prediction he sent to us earlier today. First of all, Anthony has the final score of 34-17 Penn State. He says, I think Drew can have a big game in this one as long as he continues to play a clean game at quarterback. Illinois' secondary is not the same as it was last year after losing 3 talented defensive backs to the NFL draft. Get the ball out quickly to mitigate their talented defensive line. Defensively, keep Altmaier in the pocket and force him to make plays with his arm instead of his legs. The running backs have not proven they can match the production Chase Brown provided to this point, so I think Brett Bielema will try to use a balanced running attack between his running backs and his quarterback. Take that away, and Illinois could have a difficult time scoring. So Anthony has 34-17. What's your score prediction, Marty?
I kind of been going back and forth on where I think it will end up. I'm going to be similar to Anthony, but I'm going to say 35-14 Penn State. As we've been saying, I think this is a game where the offense, I wouldn't be shocked. You want to see the offense start fast, but I wouldn't be shocked to see them start slow, kind of hem-haw around for a while before they get going. But ultimately, I just don't see where the points come for Illinois. I wouldn't be surprised to see Penn State eclipse 35 points. Um, but I'll stay a little on the conservative side here just because I do think this could be a game where through the first quarter to first half, the offense maybe gets stuck in neutral a little bit. But yeah, give me 35-14. Penn State wins to get to 3-0 in the year and start 1-0 in Big Ten play.
Yeah, I have Penn State 38, Illinois 14. I was going back and forth between 10, 14 points. Ultimately, like we've said throughout this, I think Penn State's offense may have some struggles against this Illinois defense at times, but ultimately I trust Yursich, Drew, and the rest of this Penn State offense to have a fair share, their fair share of strong drives against this Illinois defense. I think probably 17, 21 points in the first half, and then a similar second half for them wouldn't be shocking. And defensively, like we said, I don't think Illinois is going to score enough to stay in this one against this Penn State defense. Maybe Illinois keeps it close in the first half, but in the second half, I expect Penn State to pull away at the end. All right, let's give our predictions then for the Big Ten. We'll just run through the spread for each team here and go from there. Spread for each game and go from there. All right, Marty. Virginia. This is on Friday night. These games are not in order, worth noting, but we'll just run through them anyway. But this one I do know is Friday night is first up. Virginia at Maryland. Maryland a 14.5 point favored. Giving Maryland in this one, Marty. Virginia, almost pulled out that upset win over James Madison, which is crazy to say last week. That would have been an upset, but ultimately couldn't do it. I just don't know what this Virginia team has emotionally heading into this week after last week, and I feel bad saying that, but give me Maryland to win this game, especially at home.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this Terps team's actually probably a pretty good team. One of the best teams Maryland has had in some time. So give me the Terps. I think they win this one, and they probably win it handedly.
All right, we already said our picks for Penn State at Illinois. 14.5 point spread there. And all our picks have Penn State covering. Georgia Southern and Wisconsin. Wisconsin 20-point favorite here. Wisconsin coming off that loss to Washington State, but I expect Wisconsin to come out here and kind of give it to Georgia Southern. They're going to run the ball down their throats. They're going to have success doing it. They're going to win this game 35-14 probably.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I like the 35-14 prediction. That's a good one. So I don't want to stick with yours. I'll change it up. I'll say 31-14. But yeah, I think it's definitely somewhere in that ballpark.
Minnesota at North Carolina. North Carolina is 7.5 point favorite. I will say if Minnesota comes out in this game, plays their ground and pound football, is able to dominate that time of possession, they can absolutely win this game. They have the defense I think can slow down this North Carolina offense. Ultimately, I don't know if this this Minnesota offense is going to be able to have if this Minnesota offense is going to have the level of success needed to knock off North Carolina. So ultimately, give me North Carolina here to win this game about 10 points, cover that spread.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I think the Tar Heels cover the 7.5 as well. I mean, I think Minnesota's a decent football team. I think they're probably a little bit better than people gave them credit for preseason. I'm not going to be stunned to see them win 8 or so games. But I think their defense is really good. I think it'll give Drake May that offense fits. I just don't see where Minnesota gets the points. Because as good as their defense is, I don't think they're going to keep May and company under like 20 to 25. And I don't know of too many Power 5 defenses Minnesota's going to go to score that against this year. So, yeah, I think the Tar Heels cover, but I won't be stunned at all if Minnesota covers this one.
All right, next up, Northwestern at Duke. Duke an 18.5 point favorite. Northwestern got a big win last week against UTEP at home. But I'm going to have to go with Duke here to cover this spread. I think this Duke team is much better than Northwestern, and I don't think Northwestern is going to win 2 games in a row.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Duke wins this one pretty easily. Northwestern's bad. They're really bad. Like, worst team in the Power 5 by a lot bad. Yeah, give me the Blue Devils to win this one and probably win it easily.
Washington is a 16.5 point favorite on the road at Michigan State. I like Michigan State to cover in this one. I do think Washington wins ultimately, but with Michigan State, It's kind of a coin flip. Who knows what they come out like this week? Are they going to come out high in emotion where it benefits them, or is it going to be all over the place where it hurts them? Um, that being said, I think it's going to be very close, that spread. 14, 17 points either way, but give me Michigan State to cover right now. Just 16.5 points is a lot to cover as a road favorite.
That's a lot to cover as a road favorite, but I don't care how Michigan State comes out in this game. Washington is a lot better than them. I think Washington just absolutely rolls over them in East Lansing. Give me the Huskies to win it big. I think they win by 20 plus.
Western Kentucky at Ohio State. Ohio State, 29.5-point favorite here. Give me Ohio State to cover. I wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State's offense once again looks kind of bland and isn't really moving the ball, but this Ohio State defense looks pretty damn good so far this season. So I think they could win this game 38-7 and cover that spread.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the offense continues to look blah. I think the defense continues to look good. I think they'll cover, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit lower scoring. Less points on both ends there. But I think the Buckeyes win and cover. But I also think it's going to be yet another win that Ohio State fans probably don't feel super encouraged by.
Sure. All right, Northern Illinois, Nebraska. Nebraska, 10.5-point favorite here. I was tempted to take Northern Illinois because of all Nebraska's struggles in the previous years and so far under Matt Rule. But give me Nebraska to win this game. I just think Nebraska has too much talent to lose this game. Matt Rule is a good enough coach that they shouldn't lose this game. It may not be pretty. They may only win by 14, but I think they cover that 10.5-point spread.
I was also very tempted to pick the Huskies to cover this one for all the same reasons you said. Also, as you know, I'm not very high on Matt Rule's coach, and that's also a factor. But, I think Nebraska wins and covers. I don't know if it'll be by much. I think this could be a very ugly game, like 21-7 kind of game. But I think the Huskers will win and find a way to cover.
Syracuse at Purdue. Purdue, a 2.5-point underdog at home. Give me Purdue to win outright here. Syracuse has looked very good here so far this season, but Purdue is going to be the best team they've faced yet. And I think Ryan Walters, after losing that Week 1 matchup to Fresno State at home, is going to come out and look to have a big first win at Ross H Stadium. So give me Purdue to win this one. It's a night crowd, NBC. I think the Purdue fans are going to be there, be loud. So, yeah, give me the Boilermakers.
Man, we're going to disagree here. I think Syracuse goes in and wins that game. I don't think this Purdue team's very good. I know they went to the Big Ten championship game last year, but they lost a lot, obviously, Braum included. I think Dina Baber's crew goes in there and gets this done and pulls the slight upset. What is it?
2.5.
Minus
it's Purdue plus 2.5.
Oh,
Sorry. Yeah, it's Syracuse is a 2.5-point favorite. Yeah.
I'm still picking Syracuse to win outright. Even here, I think they win it, and not an upset then, but yeah, still give me Cuse.
All right, Western Michigan at Iowa. Iowa, a 20.5-point favorite. Iowa could win this game 28-0. I don't think they're getting to 35 points. So, and I don't think they're going to keep Western Michigan scoreless. So, give me Western Michigan to cover.
Yeah, that's where I am. I think Western Michigan covers. I think the Hawkeyes win it. A typical Iowa fashion, 24-7, 27-10 in a game where they get a defensive touchdown, and Brian Ferentz continues to trend toward his bonus not kicking game.
Virginia Tech at Rutgers. Rutgers is a 7-point favorite. Actually wrote down Rutgers to cover this. I don't think Rutgers covers this. I think Virginia Tech covers. But give me Rutgers to win this game.
I'm going to take the Hokies. I don't know if –
Hokies to win outright or Hokies just to cover?
I think the Hokies win outright.
Okay.
I don't think – again, as I say, with Grant Wells as their quarterback, it's not like Virginia Tech's offense is much better. I don't think this Rutgers offense is very good. I've seen enough of Gavin Wimsatt the last 2 years to be scared away from picking them. I think the Hokies win it outright. I think this is a big year for Brent Pry. I think that's a team that's going to be a little bit better than people anticipated. Give me the Hokies.
All right. Bowling Green and Michigan. Michigan a 40.5-point favorite here. I'm going to go Bowling Green. I've picked Michigan in this spot the last 2 weeks, and they've burned me. So, you know what? I'm going to go the other way. And I know by going the other way, Michigan's going to win this game 45-0, 48-0, whatever it may be. But based off just what we've seen the last 2 weeks, Michigan looks like they're going through the motions. Give me Bowling Green to cover.
Well, I hope you're right that Michigan goes the other way now, because I think I'm going to take the Wolverines to win and cover. I think this thing's got like 49-0 written all over it. Give me the Wolverines.
I wouldn't be shocked, but that's what I've said the last 2 weeks, and I've been burned. And then Louisville at Indiana. Louisville a 10-point favorite here. This Indiana team's not good. It's a shame because Tom Allen's a good guy, a very good coach, but this Indiana team's not good. Give me Louisville to win this game outright and cover that 10-point spread.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Louisville wins it outright, and I think they do it pretty easily. I think this Indiana team is really bad.
All right, with that, that's all our Big Ten picks for this week. Any final thoughts, Marty, on Penn State versus Illinois or the Big Ten this week?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, you got to come out, get the offense in rhythm early. This is a game you have no business losing unless you just absolutely shoot yourself in the foot repeatedly. But yeah, just excited for another weekend of college football, and hopefully whenever we reconvene Sunday morning, we'll be talking about a 3-0 Nittany Lions squad.
That sounds good to me. Well, until next time, everybody, have a good weekend. Enjoy another weekend of college football action. We'll be back at it on Sunday to recap Penn State versus Illinois. Nittany Lions taking on the Final Illini at 12 p.m. on Fox on Saturday afternoon. Until then, enjoy the game, enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to everybody real soon.